All right, we're just a couple of minutes past the top of the hour, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Training Thursday session with the Customer Success Team with Stoplight. My name is Dan, and along with my colleague Cheryl, we will be your hosts for today's training session. Just a few quick comments about the logistics of today's webinar. Be sure to post your questions in the Zoom webinar Q&A window. Stoplight will have a couple of people monitoring and answering questions as they're asked in the Q&A section. We won't be answering questions in the chat section within Zoom, so be sure to use the Q&A section for your questions rather than the chat section. During the tour of Stoplight Studio today, we'll be posting some product documentation links in the chat section in Zoom. We invite you to click them and bookmark them for later to allow you to dive deeper into those specific product functions based on your use case for Stoplight. For the recorded version of this training session, you can find the posted links in the video description below. The purpose of today's training session is to quickly review some key Stoplight concepts and hierarchies and walk through the Stoplight Studio UI from a functional perspective, including its layout and key features and functions. I'll be starting our session today with a quick overview of how the Stoplight platform can assist you and your organization with your API development needs, and then I'll review a few key concepts and hierarchies within the platform. From there, Cheryl will introduce us to the Stoplight Studio UI and review all of the things that you might need to know to get started as a new user in the Stoplight Studio. Before we get started, let's review some key features of Stoplight that can help you and your organization enhance your API development processes. Stoplight's API design features allow you to develop quality APIs with a collaborative approach to an API-first design philosophy. You can create and prototype your APIs using our intuitive visual editor for open API specifications. You can also create your APIs in line with industry best practices. With Stoplight's API mocking features, you can instantly create a mock version of your API based on your open API specification. This allows you to visualize and get feedback on your API designs before spending time on backend services development. API mocking allows your front-end client application developers and backend services development teams to develop their projects in parallel. With Stoplight's API documentation features, you can provide a top-notch developer experience for internal and external consumers automatically generated from your open API files. You can also help internal and external users discover, learn, and integrate with your API quickly by publishing interactive API documentation, tutorials, and code samples that are always up to date. Stoplight's governance features allow you to govern your APIs at scale with an always in-sync central repository of API designs, schemas, and API documentation. You can easily share, apply, and enforce standards across your API designs to provide consistency, reusability, and better governance throughout your API program. Utilize Stoplight's public style guides to leverage sets of curated API design rules from top companies around security and design themes. And also using our recently available proposals feature, you can now see recent API design changes at a glance and keep track of projects across your Get Connected workspace. Proposals allow you to quickly understand how an API has changed over time, highlight breaking changes, and find changes more easily in Stoplight. Before we get into our tour of the Stoplight Studio user interface, let's discuss a few key concepts and hierarchies that will better help you to understand Stoplight's user experience. One of the important concepts to understand within Stoplight is the concept of workspace versus group and project roles. While workspace roles are focused on access for managing settings and changes at a workspace level, group and project roles are focused on access for managing settings and changes at an individual group or project level. Since we'll be focusing on creating and managing individual projects within the Stoplight Studio UI today, we will be referencing the project roles during our training session today. Project roles determine who can make changes to and manage settings at an individual project level, who can manage member settings for an individual project, and who can access and view individual projects. Another of the important concepts to understand from an administrative perspective within Stoplight is the Stoplight hierarchy and two main user interfaces that you will encounter within Stoplight. At the highest level, you have the Stoplight workspace. Within the workspace, you will have one or many API and style guide projects, which can optionally be organized within groups. As you drill into the scope of creating and editing individual API and style guide project assets, you'll be transitioning from the Stoplight workspace user interface into the Stoplight Studio user interface. Your technical team and API design architects will likely be spending the majority of their time within the Stoplight Studio UI. Within the scope of a single project in Stoplight Studio, you may have one or more API designs and open API specifications, one or many API models, and one or many API documentation articles. And within a style guide project, you will have the ability to manage rules and functions for your style guide. When you transition between your individual Stoplight projects, you will navigate back to the workspace UI and then back into the Studio UI within the scope of each project that you're editing. Today, we'll be spending the majority of our time in the Stoplight Studio UI, which is the editor user interface for your Stoplight projects. And now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Cheryl, who will be conducting a tour of the Stoplight Studio, including its layout and key features and functions. Take it away, Cheryl.
Thanks, Dan. All right, a couple pieces of business to take care of real quick. Make sure that you have your chat button open as well as the QA box. We have people standing by to answer questions, and we'll be posting those links to the documentation in the chat box. A couple things to note here. Today, we're going to do a review and a demo of the Stoplight Studio editor, as well as some of the specifics around Stoplight hosted project. So Stoplight hosted project is also a web project. So those terms are interchangeable. So just be aware of that. If you have a Git repo connected to your Stoplight workspace, that there is some functionality specific there to a Git hosted project, but we'll be covering that in a future training session. All right. So if you're new to Stoplight and you maybe get invited to a project, you log into the workspace and you're going to see kind of what you have on my screen here. So you may have a different landing page depending upon your company's administrator or the owner of the workspace, whether or not they've changed or updated the landing page to be specific to your company. You'll have the quick access toolbar over to your left. And then based on your role, you may have some of those buttons. You may have all of them, or you may have just a few of those buttons. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click on the projects tab at the top. When you come into this particular screen, you're going to see possibly some groups or the projects that you've been invited to. Now, if you see groups, you'll know that there is a group by the folder and the arrow to the left of that. And when you expand that, you can see the projects inside that folder. When you are invited to a project, you should be able to click on it. And over to the right-hand side, you will see the project details panel. If you go down to the bottom, you're going to see this edit version button. You can click on the edit version button, and that will take you to the Stoplight Studio editor. One of the things that I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time working in this particular project, and it is one of the best practices that we recommend is that you pin that project. When you pin that project, you notice that over to the left-hand side in the quick access toolbar, there's a hyperlink. That hyperlink, when you click on it, the screen changes a little bit. You start seeing some of the details specific to that particular project. you will see your screen change so that the article that is appears, and it's the first article that is created, just so you're aware. It posts here in the viewer screen or the editor screen, and then you'll have some buttons at the top. So when you click on the gear button, it gives you the settings screen, and these are settings specific to the project. And you do have the ability to edit the display name versus versus the slug name of this project. You have the ability to update and add versioning. And of course, at the very bottom, you can delete the project if necessary. The next button is the share button. That share button does just that, gives you the capability of sharing it with other members within the workspace. And you can also update and edit their role within the workspace or within the project. Then you're going to come over to the edit button. And when you click on the edit button, you'll see as the screen changes, that takes you right into the Stoplight Studio designer. So we're going to go ahead and go over kind of the lay of the land, give you some of the terminology of the different areas that are used, and then we'll come back and we'll dive deeper into each of those buttons and what they do. So across the top, you have the project toolbar. Over here to the left, you have the project sidebar, pretty standard, simple. And then in the center, you have the project editor. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start back with the project toolbar, and we're going to go over in detail these buttons. So the first button is the back to the workspace button. It does just that, very simply takes you right back to the workspace. You have the hamburger menu button, and when you click on that button, it gives you some options. You can go back to the workspace, and you have a preferences button. Now, this preference button is user specific, so if you make any changes, it is to your view only. It does not affect others. You can show empty directories, and then you also have the ability to change the theme from light to dark if the light burns your eyeballs. I'm used to the light, so I'm going to stick with the light. And then you can download a project zip. This is maybe a best practice recommendation to be able to download or back up your files, your project, so that if something were to happen and somebody accidentally removes it or removes a file that you need, or it's just a good business practice to download and back up your files. All right, so the next button is the search button. It's very simply that keyword search to be able to search the artifacts within your project. Very simple. Then you have the plus button right next to it. Now this is a jam-packed fully loaded button. Gives you the ability to create artifacts associated with your project. You can create an API, an endpoint, create a model or an article. You also have the Stoplight config button. Now this particular button has a lot of functionality with it. One of the pieces of the functionality is specific to a Git repository. It allows you to set perimeters to be able to include or exclude specific files or articles that are associated, or artifacts that are associated with the project that get uploaded into or imported into your project. And we're going to post a link in the chat for you to have access to that information and documentation. Then you have the table of contents. That is the ability to kind of create a table of contents that are externally viewed. So think of it, when we were back in our workspace, you could see in that quick access panel, you have the ability to put files in order in that sidebar. You can also override a title of a file. You can customize publish URLs for the articles or the artifacts. You can add or remove files in that sidebar, allowing you to hide, kind of hide them in the table of contents. You can set the API or the article to have an internal visibility. And doing that then gives you the ability to kind of hide some of those artifacts specifically from public projects or maybe to non-members. And then you can set a default state to be able to have the table of contents either expanded or collapsed. All right, so right below that, then you also have the ability to create and import some additional files. Okay, so we're going to go right on to the publish or the commit button. Now, publish is the terminology that is leveraged with the web projects or the Stoplight hosted projects, and commit is for the Git hosted projects. So when you click on the publish or the commit button, it saves your work and it saves it all the way back out to the workspace. So it is visible to those members. If it's a public project, then it'll be saved so that everyone can see it. Then you have this nice little drop down next to the publish button that gives you the ability to discard changes since the last published. It does that. So if you are creating or working on an artifact and you decide to scrub everything that you have done and you want to go back to the very beginning, it will take you back to the last published version of that artifact. So think about it as in if you're working in a file and you close that particular file without saving, you go back and you can open up the previously saved version. That's what that does. Okay. So over to the right-hand side a little bit further, you're going to see the name of your project, and then you're going to see a drop-down right next to it. That drop-down is what we call the branch or management, or branch or version management, sorry, of the project. So branch being the Git repository term that is used, and version being the Stoplight hosted or the web project associated. Now, we're not going to go into details on this because there is a huge rabbit hole we could fall into going into this. What we will do is we're going to post the documentation in the chat box as well, so that you have the ability to bookmark it for future reference. Okay, so we're going to go over to this, to the far right hand side, to this lonely little share button here, and it is the same share button. You have the ability to add members and you can update or edit their particular roles as well. Okay, so now we're looking at the project sidebar. The project sidebar has some tabs across the top. Now these tabs give you the ability to organize your project artifacts. So the API tab gives you the ability to hold your open API specs, your API models or schemas in this particular tab. You have the docs tab, which contains the Stoplight flavored markdown articles or documentation that is specifically written about your project. You have the files tab that holds all of the artifacts. So including items that you might have imported into this particular project, you will see all of the files there. And then you have the styles tab. That is where all of the enabled style guides associated to your project are held. Okay. And then over here to the center, you have the Stoplight Studio editor screen. Now there's quite a bit of stuff in this editor screen, and you have, as you see, you can the create section where these are a bunch of action buttons, and in these action buttons you have the ability to create from scratch any of these items. Now, one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to are these little icons. So when you have something that is created and it is recognized by Stoplight, these little icons, and you'll note over here to the left, they're recognized as an API by the pink cloud or whatever color will show up for you. You will see the cloud. And it'll do the same thing later in my demo. I'm going to create something and I'm going to create a model, and you'll be able to see what the little model icon are. So I just wanted to bring your attention to those so that you know that if it's recognizing it correctly, those icons will show up in your sidebar. You'll have an import existing section. Again, more action buttons to be able to import those items. You have the recents section where if you're hopping back and forth between different projects, these are hyperlinks that will take you back to those particular projects. And then you have the help section. The help section has a quick link to take you right to the Stoplight Studio documentation. You can go to the quick start guide, which is all the way back to the very beginning on using the workspace. You can report a bug or request a feature. Okay, so when we click on an artifact within the sidebar, you just can see the screens change. So there's a few things that happen here. First off, at the top, just to be aware in your sidebar, you have some reusability functionality here. If you have files that show up or artifacts that show up here in the top sidebar, that is reusable, or those artifacts are reusable within the project. Down here in the API overview section, this will show you not only a shortcut to get to a particular path, but these files or these items are reusable within the API. So it's very different. It's specific to that API. And if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll also have some additional folders to kind of help keep track of some models, responses, and perimeters that you may create for this particular API. Okay. Then you'll notice over to the right-hand side in the editor screen that you have a couple buttons across the top. You can toggle between the form view, which is what is active right now, or if you preferred looking at the code view, you can look at the code view, and you can toggle between those two. The other thing I wanted to bring your attention to is this fantastic little button right here. This is a shortcut button that will allow you to, if you are creating a public documentation or a public project, and your particular artifact is not ready for public consumption, you can toggle this button on, and it gives you the ability to save it as an internal viewed document only for the time being until you're ready to publish it. Then over to the right-hand side, you'll have a couple other additional buttons here. And when you click on the preview panel, you'll see a secondary panel that, or the preview button, the secondary panel that pulls up. This is an automatically generated document, I guess, created by Stoplight for just visual experience. And then you have the issues and errors button. When you click on that, you can see the issues and errors. Okay. We're going to go over to the Docs tab. And so when you activate an article, you'll notice that the screen transitions as well. You'll see the stoplight flavored markdown that appears in the screen, and then you'll have markdown toolbar. You'll also have this nifty little toggle button as well for the internal saving as a document if you need to have a little bit of time to work on your document. And then you have this second panel, which gives you the preview of that article or document that you have created. And you can also toggle that button off to remove that side panel. Okay. And then we're going to go over to the Files tab, and you'll see the files is just all of the artifacts that are associated with this particular project, including anything that might have been imported. And when I click on the Styles tab, you'll see the style guides that are enabled for this particular project. These are the governance rules based on creating the APIs and or the documentation that is created for the company. And so these are just some default style guides that you can leverage. Your company may have some style guides enabled for you guys to utilize. And as an owner or an admin of a particular project, you have the capability of turning those on or off depending upon the need. Okay, so now that we know a little bit more about the buttons and the different functionality capabilities within Stoplight, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the workspace, and we are going to build a project from scratch. So we're going to do that. And in the meantime, while I'm going back to the workspace, Dan, are there any questions?
There was one question, Cheryl, and you actually answered it after the question was asked. And the question was, is there any significance to the icons shown within the Stoplight Studio for the various project artifacts? So again, to reiterate, the purple cloud identifies your Open API specification files. The orange cube identifies your data schemas or data models. And, there's a couple of different other ones. The blue icon identifies your markdown files and so on and so forth. So, yep, question was answered by you, Cheryl. I'm just
Perfect.
rephrasing.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to go ahead and create a project from scratch. Now there's a couple different things, a couple different ways you can go about doing it. There is a quick little plus button in the top right corner, or sorry, that's the left corner, where you can create your project from that screen. Or you can also go back to the projects tab, and over to the top right hand corner, you'll see this new projects button. And when you click on new project, that also takes you to the create of a project screen. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to create our project. We're going to call it our studio demo, and we're going to change the visibility because this is going to be a public project. And then I'm going to save it in the Training Thursdays just to help keep everything organized, because I'm a part of the Training Thursdays group. And I'm going to click on this Create API project. Okay, so you'll notice when you come in, there's nothing loaded, there's nothing created. So you get your base screen where you can create and import. Over to the left-hand side, you'll notice that all of a sudden you have some buttons. So these are also action buttons in the sidebar that give you the capability of shortcutting and creating some of these items. You can also come from the plus button, and you can create a lot of those as well. And I'm going to show you a few shortcuts when we do this. But the first thing that I want to do in this particular project is I'm going to share with a couple of my colleagues, because I'm not going to be doing all of the work, and I also need them to have admin capability so that they can have the right functionality, as well as then when I hit the send button, they're going to get an email notification notifying them that they have been invited to that project. So it's not a blind thing. You do get an email, a notification when you invite those people to a project. Okay. So the next thing I think we're going to do is I need to import a few things, because I already have an open API spec that I leverage a lot. And so we're going to import a couple files first, and then we'll come back and we'll create some things from scratch as well. So I have an open API spec, so I can leverage the action button to do that, to import an open API spec. I can also, when this button is here, I can click the import file button here. I can come down to the plus button and come import a file here, or you can right click and you can import here. Okay, we're going to use the action button first so I can show you kind of a little bit about the experience. So when you click on it, it'll take you to your desktop files. You can then navigate to that particular document, and we're going to go ahead and open. You'll see the green banner across the bottom. That lets you know that you are successful, that you have, and it's a check mark so that visually you can see it was successful in importing. I also have a Postman Echo collection that I am going to go ahead and load. So again, you can do it from the action button, but I'm going to shortcut and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to import, and it's a Postman collection. So I'm going to go ahead and select Postman collection. And from there, I'm going to select my Postman Echo collection. And again, I get the banner at the bottom with the check mark saying that we are good. We have imported. Okay. So I'm going to go over here to the Postman collection because I know a lot about my particular Postman Echo collection. I know that with my style guides, there's going to be some triggers for some errors, and it's going to take me a little bit of time to get through all of that, me and my colleagues. So I'm going to toggle that switch to make this document an internal document for now, until I have time to come back and finish it and get it ready for public consumption. I need to create a new API. Again, we can use the action button here. We can right click and you can create a new API. You also have the ability to choose the different languages between YAML and JSON, or you can come up to the plus button and choose create API. When you choose that, it also gives you the same choices. So we're going to name it demo API. Sorry, I know it's not very original, folks. You have the ability to change the version and we support the different versions of the Open API spec language, and then YAML or JSON. When you click the create button, you'll see you get your green banner at the bottom with the check mark. And if it's not green, it may be a different color, but you'll know it's successful by the check mark. And I think besides creating that, we need to create a model. So here's the model action button. You can right click and create a new model here. You can change it there. You can also go to the plus button and create a new model here. So we're going to go ahead and go call this our demo model. We're sticking with that original theme. You can add tags. They are recommended. At this point in time, I don't have a tag set and ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that blank for now. And then you have the scope, the common button and the single API button. So this is your reusability functionality. This gives you the ability to have the common schema or a common model that you can reuse within your project. If you do the single API button, then it is going to be specific to that API that you're creating it in. So we're gonna make a common model so that I can reuse it throughout the project. And I'm gonna go ahead and click the create button. All right, so we are successful. We've got the plus. Okay. Now, just one thing that I wanted to note for you, we do support a lot of different file types when we're importing documentation. And if Amy hasn't already, she's going to post that link in the chat box for you. And so we need to also go in and create a document. So I need to create an article that is associated. Well, shoot, one thing I do need to do, and which I happen just to remember, and I apologize, but we're going to come back here to the example API. And I need to, before I get ready to publish, what I want to do is I need to preview this, and I see that there were a couple errors, and I need to fix those because when I go to publish, I need those to be fixed so it's ready to go. So, and you'll notice that errors pop up, and you may be curious as to where these come from. They come from the style guides that have the set of rules that govern any project that is created, or any API that is created, and that is something that is to be able to comply with my company's workspace rules. And so when I click on this particular error, it's going to take me to that section in the code. And you'll notice there is a typo there. And so we're going to correct that typo. When I correct that typo, you notice the error goes away. But I also have a warning that's letting me know in the contact object. And so I'm going to show you guys a little bit about how to do that from the form side. It's sometimes a little bit simpler to correct some of those warnings. And in the contact object, it is requiring my name. And so I'm responsible for this particular project and this particular API. You'll notice when I tab over, then it creates a couple other warning. And So you'll see it's wanting a URL as well as an email. And so we're going to go ahead and populate that. And we're going to add the email. Okay. And when I tab off of that, you'll notice that everything is cleared up. So when you click on the preview, you'll see the automatically generated document, and you'll notice that some of the information is updated here as well. Okay, so now I feel a little bit more comfortable about moving on to the articles. And so we can create an article doing exactly the same thing, using using the action button in the center. You have a button that appears in the sidebar. You can create an article here in the plus button. You can right click and create new article here as well. So when you right click and you do the right click from here, just don't forget to hit the enter button, because then it'll not remember that it kind of basically saves it. So when you hit enter, then you'll see the stoplight flavored markdown the screen pull up again, and a baseline markdown. And you have again the buttons across the top with the toggle button, and then you'll have your preview of that article. So I'm going to go ahead for expediency, and I have some markdown already written, and I am going to go ahead and just paste it in, so that just to kind of show you guys a little bit about that preview. You have the ability to kind of scroll with your mouse. You can scroll down and take a look at some of the documentation, making sure that it's appearing as you expect. And if it is, and everything is looking good to me, this is exactly what I'm expecting, I'm going to go up here and hit the publish button. Okay. So it's going to take a minute to publish, because it is saving it all the way back to the workspace for public visibility and or however, whatever visibility levels you have set. And when you first publish, you're going to see the share button pop up, and you can have the option here also to leverage and invite additional members here. If not, you can go ahead and click the X button. And so our article is now published. Okay. So I'll show you real quick for what kind of happens in the files button. All of the files, along with the imported files that have been imported, are all here in the files tab. Then the styles tab shows you the again, the enabled guidelines that are associated for the projects that are created, leveraged in the workspace. Okay, so now that we have created all of this, we are going to go back to the workspace and kind of see our handiwork and what happened when we created this project. So we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning, and you'll notice on the left-hand side, the quick access toolbar, that all of a sudden the project that I created is pinned here. Well, when you create a project, it pins it automatically for you. So when you click on that, you'll start to see things populate. It's going to take a minute because it's got to load for the first time. And you'll see the article that we created, so that it explains about my particular project and some of the how to use and leverage the APIs. And you'll have the information here. You can see the demo model that I created at the very bottom, and there's those handy little icons that are associated with it. And you can then navigate back to Studio if you need to. So if there's anything in this particular demo that you saw you're more interested in, we recommend you go to our documentation. Our docs team has done a great job of organizing those docs for ease of use. And Dan, are there any other questions?
Just one question, Cheryl. The question is, from within this, if you've got multiple users that are, or multiple people that are in a particular project working together, is there a way to see those changes in a live environment, so that, any changes somebody else makes, you can see them at the same time as another person is
Yes.
making their changes. So
Yes.
we can demonstrate that real quick, Cheryl, if you want to.
Yeah,
Why don't you go ahead and go into your project, and I'll go in there and we can kind of see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come on over. Let me go into, let's go into the example API customer.
Okay. And when I do that, you should.
So over to the right hand side, you'll
show up.
see, yep, you'll see your colleague and wherever they are in, whatever file they're in or whatever artifact they're in. And if you can see live as he makes changes. And it tells you, I mean, it identifies, if you hover over, you can see him, you can see his login, his D, you can see Amy who's popped in. So anytime we're making changes, you can see it live. So you're not duplicating efforts in making the same corrections. So, and if you know that they're in these working, you can go work on something else. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay. So we're gonna switch back over here, and I'm gonna give it to you, hand it back over to you, Dan.
Super. Thank you very much, Cheryl. I'll go ahead and turn my camera back on. So before we wrap up today, I'd like to do a quick review of the Stoplight subscription plan options that you have to choose from. You can leverage a selection of software as a service subscription options fully hosted by Stoplight for your API design, mocking, documentation, and governance building blocks. Stoplight's free plan allows you to begin exploring Stoplight's design-first features and allows you to collaborate with up to 3 users on 2 projects within your workspace. Moving up to Stoplight's starter subscription plan, your subscription includes 5 users who can collaborate on up to 50 projects and unlocks the approved email domain and custom workspace domain features within your workspace. And of course, you can purchase additional individual user licenses as you need. By leveling up, by leveling up to Stoplight's professional subscription plan, your subscription includes 10 users on up to 100 projects. And again, you can purchase additional user licenses as you need to. With Stoplight Professional, you gain the ability to invite external guests to your Stoplight projects so that they can view your internal API design specifications and API documentation articles from behind an authenticated session. Stoplight Professional also unlocks additional single sign-on options, such as SAML and LDAP, as well as additional Git provider options, such as Bitbucket Server and Azure DevOps Server, which is public as of today. It also allows you to have custom workspace design features within your workspace that will let you use your own host name for your Stoplight hosted API designs and documentation. Lastly, with the Stoplight Enterprise subscription plan, your subscription includes 25 users, unlimited projects, and unlimited external guests. And once again, you can purchase additional individual user licenses as needed. With Stoplight Enterprise subscription, you gain the ability to access volume license discounts, additional account invoicing flexibility, as well as custom payment terms. And you will also have an enhanced experience from a customer success perspective by providing custom onboarding and training engagements, as well as an enhanced priority for your support cases. That wraps up our training session today. So be sure to mark your calendars for our next Training Thursday session on October 13th. Our live training sessions are scheduled for the second Thursday of each month. Also, be sure to check out our Learn with Stoplight webinars playlist for recordings of all of our past Stoplight training sessions, which can be found in YouTube by searching for Learn with Stoplight webinars.